Okay, welcome back to the first Hack the Box machine that I've done for quite a while, and it is this one, Intelligence, which is a medium Windows box, and I quite enjoyed it. In fact, it actually has a technique in it that I was going to use in one of my own machines, which I was creating for Hack the Box. So I had to change mine after playing this one. But yeah, I definitely approve, good machine, so we're going to go through it all now. So, as usual, the first thing we're going to do is an nmap scan. The remote machine IP is this, so we'll do T4 to make it slightly faster, and we'll do the first 6,000 ports. And I'll skip ahead until that is completed. Okay, so we've got the obvious Active Directory stuff, 53, DNS, Kerberos, all that stuff, LDAP. So it's obviously an AD domain controller, and then we've also got PowerShell remoting, and we've also got a web server on port 80. So first thing we're going to try is the web server. And this is what we get. Pretty empty website. There's not a lot to do other than just download these two documents. So we'll download those. We're just going to stick everything in c/temp. Download that one to the same place, and then we'll go take a look at them. And if we open them up, they're both just kind of default text. There's nothing useful in there. But if we open them with Notepad++ or any text editor, and just have a look around, when we get down near the bottom, we can see this /creator tag, and it's got william.lee. So that's probably a username. So we'll stick that in a notepad file. We've got one potential username there. And if we take a look at the other one, we've got the same thing, but with a different username. So we will copy that as well. So this took me quite a long time to figure out what to do next, because I kept just looking around the website and trying, dirbuster and various other things to see if I could find any files. Couldn't find anything anywhere. I also tried taking these two usernames and just trying them against like LDAP or SMB, just with like the same password as the username or various different versions, like just William as the password and all that sort of stuff. I didn't get anywhere with any of that, and then eventually realized that the files are named in a specific format with the date. So perhaps we can kind of brute force other files if they're all just named like this with the date. We can just loop through all the dates in the last year or something and see if we find anything. And we can see if we hover over the download button, we can see it's in a folder on the web server called Documents, and then just the file name after that. So let's put together a quick script that will just attempt to find any files with this name format. There's obviously a lot of different programming languages and scripting languages and things you could do this with. I'm just going to do it in VB.NET because that's what I'm comfortable with. But yeah, you could do it in PowerShell. There's all sorts of things you could do it with. Okay, so let's make the font nice and large so you guys can see. So what we want to do is use the web client class. So we'll just call this client, web client, and we will try and download. In fact, we want to loop through all the dates actually, don't we? So let's do like start date, we'll call it. It's going to be, when should we do? We'll do like 2019. And then we'll do the end date. We'll just say like the 1st of June, somewhere on there. And then we want to do a loop. We'll use the start date. So we'll say, well, the start date is less than the end date. And then we're going to change the start date in this loop. So each time we get to the end of the loop, we will add one day to the start date. I think we actually need to do this, because it probably won't modify that value, it'll just return it. Yeah, it returns a new date. And this also actually wants to be new up there, forgot about that. So now we need to get the date in a string format that we can use, so we'll just do date string. And it's going to be the start date to string, and then we'll do it in the format that the PDFs were named in. So it was year, month, day, I assume, yeah. It's got to be date because it's 15. There aren't 15 months in the year last time I checked. So we want to do YYY, MM, no, it's capital M. That's nice, it actually tells you now. And then DD for the day. And then we want to add, what was it actually called? It was -upload at the end. So -upload.pdf. We're only going to look for PDF files for now. When I actually originally did this, I had it loop through a load of different file extensions, but spoiler alert, there's only PDFs. So yeah, we get the string for the file name, and then we just want to try and use the web client to download it. So it wants to be HTTP, and then the server 248/documents, I think it was. And we'll add our date string, and then we've got to say where we want to download the file to. So we'll just stick everything in c/temp. We probably also need to put the date string on there as well. So that's going to try and download every file that's named between 2019 to 2021. We need to wrap this in a try catch because that will error if the file doesn't exist. We don't actually need to do anything with the exception, so we'll just ignore that. And yeah, then we'll add a day and then it'll repeat the loop. So yeah, that should do the trick. We'll run that and then see if we get a load of files in c/temp. Okay, so something's gone wrong there because these file names that it's trying to create are very weird. So what did I do wrong there? Why is the date string looking like it is? Oh, yeah, okay, that was stupid. Because we're putting that in the toString method. So that should do it. Yeah, so now we're actually looking for the correct formats. So we'll see if it finds anything. There we go, we're getting some things coming through now. Quite a lot of them. And this actually threw me off quite a bit when I was doing this machine the first time. That's finished now. But yeah, if we look at them, you'll see the first one is just junk text, just default rubbish, like the other ones were. Same for the second one, just rubbish. Same for the third one, just rubbish. So at this point, I assumed that they're all just full of junk text and that the whole idea is that we're just going to look for usernames in them, like we did with the first ones. So see here, again, this one's by William Lee, but each of them has different usernames in them. So that's what I thought the whole purpose of these PDF files was. But it turns out one of them amongst these 50 or so, or is it 99? There's 99 of them. Yeah, amongst these 99 items, one of them actually has some proper text in it. So I'm going to try and find the one that's got the actual password in. If anyone else is following along, it's 0604, that one, 2020-0604. And this one has got some info in here that says, if you've got a new user account, your default password will be this. So we'll take that, and we'll stick that in our notepad file here. However, if we try that password with these two usernames, it doesn't work. So what we're going to do is loop through all those PDF files and get all the usernames from them. Comment this out now, we don't need to do that anymore. So let's just say for each file in c/temp, so we'll do IO directory get files, c/temp. So now we can do for each line in the file. So we want IO file read all lines, there we go. And then we're going to use the file that we're currently on in this loop, so this thing here, that we're going to read from. We could do this in a more economical way by looping, like starting at the end of the lines and looping up because we know it's right at the end of the file, but considering this is just going to run once relatively quickly anyway, it doesn't really matter. So now we just want to see if the line starts with /creator, then we can grab the username from that. So we'll also create user list up here. This is going to be a list of strings that we'll add each of them to, and then at the end we will write that out. Write our lines. We'll do c/temp/userlist.text, and then the user list. Of course, that'll just write each of those items from this list onto a new line in this text file. But yeah, we need to get the usernames first. So we'll just create a new string, which is going to be our username, and then we want to add that to our list. But in the meantime, we need to actually get the username from this line that we're currently on. So we'll just do it in a pretty hacky way, I guess. It's not going to be very pretty, and it might break, but we'll see. So we want to do a substring of the current line, and we want to start it from the index of the first bracket, because we know that the usernames had a bracket around them. So that's going to just basically trim off everything before the first bracket. And then we want to trim the end result of the brackets. So we want to get rid of the brackets. So for that, we can do a new char array, and we want an open bracket, and we want a close bracket. And then that should give us what we want. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it did work, but it turns out there's also a line that says /creator and then has text after it, which is going to be really easy to trim out. So we'll just say if not username equals text, then we add it to the list. Again, this is all very like hacky. This isn't good programming. Like we're not checking to see if the text is long enough and all that stuff. It's just to get the job done. Let's run. So there we go. That's better. We also are getting some duplicates. So we actually also want to say, and also, I'll say if not, user list contains the username. So there we go. That should mean we don't get duplicates now. There we go. So finally, we've got a unique list of usernames, and then we can try that with the password that we got. So this is the password we're going to try with them all. There's a lot of different ways you can try, testing usernames and passwords. I'm going to just do another little script here because it's just easy while we're here. So we'll loop through each username in the file. So read all lines, and we're going to grab that path from there. And then what we want to do is try and use that with LDAP. So we'll just do a new directory entry. Directory entry is the class that works with LDAP in .NET. And we want to just bind to just the IP because we don't know anything else about the domain just yet. We could probably find out the domain name just from a quick LDAP search. So then we want the username, which is going to be the username we're currently on in our list. And then the password is going to be the one that we got from the PDF files. Stick that in there. And then we'll do secure as the authentication type because otherwise it'll probably fail. Now there is a pretty weird feature of this directory entry class in that it won't actually fail until you try and get something from it. So we need to try and get, let's just do object GUID because that's something I know exists on every object in AD. We'll just stick that in a temporary variable to shut it up. So that should work now. If we stick it all in a try catch block, for any usernames that are invalid, it should just fail. Or when I say invalid, I mean that they don't have this password. For any time it's successful, so if we make it all the way down here, we'll write out to the screen success with, and then the username. And then at the end, we just want to stick console.readline, so that it doesn't close the window straight away. We don't need to see any exception details again. So yeah, if we just run that, we'll get rid of this first part. This should do the job. So we get nothing while it's trying all the failed ones. And then hopefully, yeah, there we go. We got success with Tiffany Molina. So that is the username that has this password. So we'll stick that in our file. Cool. So again, there's plenty of other ways you could do that last part, definitely. But for these first parts, you probably are going to have to script something yourself. It doesn't have to be in .NET. It could be Python, could be PowerShell, could be whatever. Although PowerShell basically is just .NET. But yeah, hopefully that just gives you some kind of idea of how I did it. So now we've got those credentials for Tiffany. If we try and PowerShell in, let's see what we get. So we'll do ETSN, which is just shortcut, by the way, for enter PS session. So just to save some typing. ETSN 10.10.10.248. And then the credentials, again, you can just do -cr instead of credential. We'll put Tiffany.Molina. Let's see if it lets us in. No, access is denied. So we can't get into there yet. So let's have a look around SMB. Do netuse 10.10.10.248. Use the default IPC $share that exists on every Windows machine. And we'll do user Tiffany.Molina and then that password. Cool, that completes successfully. So now if we just do start run and just go to that IP, Windows will automatically use those credentials. And we can see we do have some shares. So can we get into anything? We can get into IT and we can read this PS1 PowerShell file. So what is this doing? Check web server status, scheduled to run every 5 minutes. Cool, imports Active Directory module, gets all the child items in this DNS zone, which is quite a weird thing to do. And that's one bad thing about this machine that I would say is not very realistic. It's just meant to check if a web server is up. And what it's doing is looping through every object in the DNS zone for this domain that has a name that starts with web. So we've got web and then a star, so wildcard. And it's doing that to get the machine names of the web servers. So yeah, anything that starts with web. In the real world though, there's a million other ways you would get a list of the web server names before you did this. Like before you start looking in the DNS zone with AD. Like that's a very strange way of doing it. Oh, the other thing it does that's important for us is it tries to invoke a web request against all of the web servers that it finds, and it does this, use default credentials. So that gives us a tip again, that maybe if we can create something that starts with web and then has something else after it, this script that runs every 5 minutes is going to try and authenticate with us just via HTTP. So that is basically what we need to do. Just create a new DNS record in this zone in Active Directory and just give it a name with web, point it to our IP address, and then this script will just try and connect to us. Now to create the DNS record, we're going to use a tool called DNS tool. I literally just Googled for like script that can create DNS records in LDAP or something like that. That's how I found this. It's free download from GitHub. And yeah, if we use this, DNS tool py, so we want a username, which is going to be tiffany.molina. Password is going to be that thing. Zone is going to be intelligence.hdb, because that was what we've got here, intelligence.hdb. We want to do -a because we're going to add a record. So we'll do add. And we want to do -t a, that is the only option, but also because we're creating an A record in DNS, an A record maps a name to an IP address, whereas a PTR record maps an IP address to a name. And then we've got -r for target record. So this is what we're going to create. So we'll call it web VB1. And then we want to put the data that's actually going to be in it as our IP address. So let me see what my IP on the VPN is. 10.10.14.127. And then the last thing we need to do is this hostname argument. So we just want to put the machine that we're connecting to, which is this. So if we've got everything correct there, I might have missed something. We should be good. Okay, so we need the username to have the domain in it, intelligence.hdb/. Cool, so that looks like it was successful. Right, I just want to pause the video here for a second to explain something that I didn't mention at the time of recording, and that is that this is with the default permissions set up on Active Directory DNS zones. When I first did this machine, I assumed that the machine had just been set up to allow this Tiffany Molina account to create new DNS records, which I thought was very unrealistic. But I went and checked on a fresh AD install on one of my VMs, and this is actually the default setup. All authenticated users, so all domain users, can create new DNS records, which is very strange to me because I can understand why computers need to do that, because when they get an IP address from DHCP, they need to update the DNS zone to point their host name to the correct IP that they've currently got. But for normal user accounts, I've got no idea why that is a thing. So yeah, I just thought I'd point that out, that this is quite realistic. You could feasibly do this in a real domain. But anyway, let's pick up where we left off. So now what we need to do is run something that's going to sit and wait for the machine to connect back to us. And to do that, we're going to download a tool called Inve. Inve GitHub, we'll just do something like that. There we go. Open PowerShell. Run Inve. Great, that's a strong start. Right, so now I've debugged their program. It turns out it's because IPv6 is not enabled on my machine. That seems to screw everything. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to turn IPv6 back on. See if that fixes it. Yeah, so now it works. We're also going to turn SMB off. This is honestly painful how long this is taking to set this up. But if we do that again, now it should just fail because port 80 has already been used by my web server. So we will stop that. Open up ISAdmin, stop, and then we should be able to run it. There we go. Okay, so now we are listening for incoming authentication requests on the HTTP. So we'll give it a few minutes because that script says it's only going to run once every 5 minutes. Okay, so it's captured something. There we go. We got this here. So we're going to copy all that. In fact, actually, it's already written it to a text file. So we've got this, which we can now pass to Hashcat, and that should be able to crack it. So let's give that a go. That was honestly so much more painful than the first time I did it. I can't remember. I guess they must have changed something, or maybe I didn't have IPv6 disabled at that point, but that's the first, having something that doesn't work when IPv6 is disabled. It's normally the opposite way around. And also, I know I'm kind of glossing over how this all worked. I'm going to do a separate video on NTLM authentication, explaining in a lot more detail. It's something I want to learn more about. Like, I know the basics of how it works, and I understand that you can do things like this, but I'd like to actually get a bit more in depth with it, so I'll do some more research on that, and then I'll do a video for you guys with what I find out. But that does mean for now, for this machine, we just need to accept that this captured the incoming NTLM authentication request, and now we can crack it. So if we do hashcat, and hopefully we can just pass it that now that it uses the automatic mode, and rockq.text, and see if it detects what mode we're in without us having to go and find the exact number we have to type in to tell it. It doesn't detect it, so we've got to do -m, and we've got to go find out what the number is. Okay, so a bit of Googling later, it turns out it is mode 5600. So now that's going to work, and it gives us his password, which is Mr. Teddy. So ted.graves, his password is Mr. Teddy. So let's try and use his credentials to connect via PowerShell. And you see we also get access denied for his credentials. So long story short, obviously the first time I went through this, I had a long look around at everything using his credentials, and eventually stumbled upon a GMSA, which is a group managed service account. I've actually mentioned them in previous videos. They're very useful because you can use them to run services. So like in just the default services on any server, it's like anything in here. You can use a GMSA instead of a domain user account, and then you can limit the things that the service can access by restricting permissions for that user account. But unlike a normal user account, it gets its password automatically reset every 30 days, I think it is. And it's got a really long, complex password, so much less chance of anyone being able to crack it like a normal password you would set. However, for that whole system to work, because they're stored in the domain, if we've got a server that's running some service like this, and we want to be able to set it to run as that user account, normally you'd type the username and password in there. But obviously, even as a legitimate admin trying to set this up, we don't know the password for the GMSA because it's managed by the domain and it's reset all the time, like I said. So you have to grant permission for the computer account that this service is running on. So again, we'll pretend we're on a server and these are the services on the server. So for this computer account, we need to allow that to access the password property on the GMSA in the domain. Now, don't worry if that doesn't make too much sense to you. It'll make a bit more sense in a second. So I'm just going to use this free tool which locates GMSAs and MSAs in the domain. First of all, we need to set it to actually connect to the domain that we're looking at. HTTP. So the reason that this works, by the way, the reason that name resolution is working is because I set in my config file on my VPN, I set this option here. I added this line to point my DNS server for the VPN to this domain controller that we're trying to attack. If you don't do that, then you won't be able to use the domain name here. And I don't think you'll be able to put an IP address in here because it's actually wanting a domain, not a domain controller. But yeah, so if we set his username and password, it was Mr.Teddy, I think, capital. And then we'll click refresh. We'll see. Yeah, so now it's found this group MSA, which is called svc_int. So we'll add that to our list of usernames, svc_int. And if we have a look at this, we can see which groups it's a member of. Domain computers, which is normal because these user accounts kind of act like a computer account in the way that their passwords and everything are handled. Go to here. Right, now this is why this whole exploit is going to work, is because as you would expect from what I described earlier, the domain controller, which is the server that some of the services are running on that are using this account, that is allowed to access this MSA, which means they can retrieve the password basically for it. But what makes this vulnerable to an attack is that this group has also been added, which is quite unrealistic because, like I said, you would only ever need to normally add the computers that are going to access the MSA. There's no reason that a user account should ever need to have access to the MSA's password. But in this setup, this group, IT support, has got some user accounts in it, and one of those user accounts happens to be us, this ted.graves account. So that means we can basically just read the password from this MSA. So let's do that using a script. If we just Google, just do read GMSA password. We'll probably find as the first result this. So if we scroll down a bit, we'll find this part here where they basically get the server's account, which is a perfectly legitimate normal PowerShell command you can do. And then they tell it to include the password property, which is this managed password. And then they use their own command to convert that to plain text. Now this is actually plain text. It's just that, like I said, these passwords are really long, complex, just random bytes. So when you try and convert that to actual readable text, it just looks like garbage. But that is the password. You could copy and paste that and use it as credentials. So let's grab their DS internals module. I've actually already downloaded it, but you can just download it here, and then we'll be able to use these commands that they've given us. Now, to make things quicker, because I'm not particularly great with PowerShell, I'm just going to paste in what I ended up using when I did this the first time. And yeah, we'll go through it very quickly, but yeah, it literally just creates a new directory entry, which we used earlier from .NET, connects to the machine, connects to this specific user account, because that's the one that we're trying to get the password from. The rest of this stuff, if this all looks weird to you, go and watch my video on Active Directory Basics, where I explain distinguished names, which is what this is. But it's essentially just a path to the user account. So you can think of this as like a file name, this is a folder, and then this is like the top level folder, essentially. But yeah, in this case, it's not files, it's users. Then we're using his username and his password for the authentication. We just set the authentication type to secure again, so that it actually works. Then we have to do, this is what threw me off the first time when I was trying to do this. I didn't have this line in here, but you need to do this refresh cache, otherwise the property won't actually have a value in it, which is very weird. I haven't encountered any other scenarios where that's the case, but for this one, for some reason, this property, you have to do a refresh before it'll have anything in it. Then we just get the value of that attribute, this MSDS managed password attribute, and then we use their command to convert from the binary format that is stored in this attribute to plain text. And then we're also going to convert that to an NT hash or an RC4 hash, whatever you want to call it, because we're going to need that for the next part of the attack. But for now, let's just do this, stick this in PowerShell, and it should run it all. And then when we do that, we get the NT hash, or the NTLM hash, some people call it, for this group managed service account. Now get rid of all this. The reason that we wanted this hash is because we're going to do what's called an S4U kerberos attack. It's going to be too much to explain in this video. I will do a separate video on kerberos delegation attacks, covering all three kind of major ways you can do this. And again, I do feel bad kind of skipping over stuff, but it's way too much to get into here. I feel like I'll just do a terrible job of explaining it if I try and do it quickly. But to give like a real brief summary, this user account is allowed to basically impersonate other users on the domain controller on that specific machine. And we can see this if we go, let's just do an LDAP query. I've already set this up previously using those credentials that we've got. But yeah, if we want to just go into here, we look at, we click on the user account itself, and then we're looking for the user account control. Yep, so user account control, you'll see it's set to trusted to auth for delegation. And also, if we look at this, allowed to delegate to, and we can see it's allowed to basically impersonate other users. Delegation just means impersonating other user accounts. So it's allowed to impersonate other users when it's accessing this service. This is a service principal name. Again, if you're not familiar with those, I've done a whole video on Kerberos. But yeah, this basically just means the website on this machine, so the DC in this case. But because we've got the password for this service account, we can create a fake request, and luckily you can actually change the service that you're trying to delegate for, which is kind of weird. Like, it seems like you really shouldn't be able to do that, but you can literally just specify a different service, even though it's saying that we're only allowed to delegate for this service, and it'll still let you do it. So we're going to use Rubius for this. I haven't finished making my GUI for Rubius yet, so we're going to do the command line version. And the attack that we need to do is called S4U. Again, I will do another video going into all these Kerberos delegation attacks in a lot more detail. But for now, just accept that that's the one we need to do. And we want to do a domain of the domain we're attacking. We want to do impersonate user, I think it is. And we'll just do administrator. And we need the RC4 hash, which is what we got earlier for this service account, because this is what's used to encrypt the ticket. Again, my other video on Kerberos explains all that stuff. And what else do we need? We want alt service. So this we're going to say CIFS. And CIFS is the Kerberos service name for accessing an SMB share, basically. So I'm just going to do that so that we can just connect to an SMB share. In fact, first of all as well, we'll do netuse *delete so that it clears out the connection that we had remembered. Actually, that wouldn't have mattered because that was using the IP address, not the domain name, so it's fine, just so that Windows doesn't automatically try and reuse our old credentials. But yeah, it wouldn't have actually mattered in this case. And then we also need to do user, which is going to be this svc_int account. And then we also need to do msds spn to say the original SPN that we were supposed to be delegating for, so dc.intelligence.htb, I think that was right, with that www. And then we'll do /ptt so that it stores it with our session. I think that's all we need. I might be missing something, but we'll see. Error retrieving domain controller. The domain does not exist or cannot be contacted. Do we need to do /dc? So dc intelligence hdb. Try that again. Okay, right. So this is quite a common thing that I see people on the Hack the Box forums complain about all the time. Whenever you see the word skew in anything to do with Kerberos, it always means that your time on your machine is not the same as the time on the remote machine. And again, previous videos have explained why that's important, but essentially it's to help stop replay attacks. So what we need to do is set our time to match the remote machine. Obviously, we don't know what the time is on the remote machine, but if we open up Control Panel and go to the Date section, Clock and Region, set date and time, and then if we click on the Internet Time tab, we can set a machine to sync time with. And you can see I've already got the IP in from when I did this before. And we click Update now, and it says it was successfully synchronized. So now my time has changed to 2 o'clock in the morning, which is the time that the remote machine will be on. So if we run this command again now, see now it works, and we don't need to do anything with this because it's automatically imported the ticket because we use /ptt. So now if we've done everything correctly, we should have a ticket for the CIFS service, which again is SMB shares, on this machine. And we need to go to that exact name, otherwise it won't use that ticket. So if I'll copy that, go to start run, I'll just do // paste that in, and we'll just try and access the $C share, which again is like a default share for the C drive that exists on every machine. And we'll see if it lets us in. It does. So it thinks we're administrator basically, and we can get into the administrator folder and go to the desktop, and we can get the root flag. I've just remembered as well, we didn't actually ever get the user flag, did we? Completely forgot about that. It was in this share, because for some reason users is actually shared, so the root of the C drive and then users. I can't remember if it was Tiffany. Yeah, it was Tiffany. So the first credentials we got, we could have just accessed that and got the user flag, but yeah, I forgot to do that. It's not actually necessary to progress, as you've seen, but yeah, that's where the user flag was. So yeah, that is pretty much it. I feel like I did a really bad job explaining some things in this one. Like we glossed over a lot of things, which I don't like doing. Like I normally want to go really in depth on everything that we do in these videos, but like I said, I think it's for the best in the long term that I do a separate video explaining Kerberos delegation attacks and also explaining NTLM. I was going to say relaying. We're not technically doing relaying for this machine, but we were capturing NTLM credentials and then cracking them. And I want to explain exactly how that works. So yeah, I guess keep an eye out for those videos, hopefully coming soon.